Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the newest episode of the Theater Enthusiast podcast. I like how I always say it that way whenever I introduce anybody. I don't know why. I'm so tickled pink or tickled red, I should say, because they are currently starring as Satine in Moulin Rouge. And I told her this to her face, and I will say it again. You're like such a great Satine,
Thank you.
like truly a great Satine. Please welcome Solea Pfeiffer. What?
Hello.
I used to have an applause app. I had to get rid of nobody could hear it over Zoom, but here
But
we
we
are.
feel it in spirit.
Yes, I'll
Absolutely.
do applause. I don't know if anybody listening can even hear me applauding. It's like golf claps. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I love you. I just noticed your plant in the back. I love that.
No, I
Mine
mean,
in the corner.
you gotta have a nice. I think a plant in the back of a interview always adds for it some nice ambiance. It
I live in a
makes
studio, so you're just seeing like my entire and like my
absolutely.
bookshelf of tchotchkes.
As a home is not a home without tchotchkes, I say.
Yeah. I will say, like, before you came on, I was like, I really noticed my stuffed Shakespeare that I have. Like, I have a
Hmm.
Shakespeare, and I was like, that's so funny because we will be talking about Hamlet at some point.
We'll be talking about Hamlet.
Well, I
Absolutely.
will also say, I have seen many productions of Hamlet, and you are probably my favorite Ophelia I've seen.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
That is intensely high praise that I do not take lightly. Thank you very, very much.
And your production of Hamlet was my favorite up until I saw Eddie Izzard's one person play of Hamlet. So now
Mhm.
it's like number two. I'm sorry to say that to you over Zoom,
No,
but
that's
I mean,
okay. Listen, it still blows my mind that it blows my mind that I did Shakespeare in the Park. That I feel like that's one of those things that you kind of always, you're like, maybe that'll happen in my life. So listen, I'm just happy I got to be a part of it at all.
let's talk. Let's since we brought it up, let's go out of order of everything. Let's talk Hamlet. Why the not? You know?
Well,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I guess like it's so interesting, I think the labels, I've always found this, and I will die on this hill, that musical theater actors have kind of more of a magnifying glass on them when it comes to, say, straight acting or classical acting, or when we stray outside of the genre of musical theater. I think there's this sort of like, oh no, it's they're generally broad or this, and I'm like, the only difference between most of these performers and the people who stick to the other mediums is that these people excel in many other skills other than just, the
Yeah.
uh, the exquisite divine skill of interpreting text. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so I've always thought it was this kind of, but I think it's something that a lot of us do. We put ourselves into this category and we assume that that's what we will do. And I think the past few years kind of totally blew up that kind of limit that I had put on myself, just totally on my own, and getting to do like film and TV work and then Shakespeare in the Park and to play that role. Um, yeah, I just never, I mean, I did go to RADA. I studied, I
All
did
right,
like
we'll talk about it. Don't worry. Again, full
a
fledged, like, but I just want to like piggyback on what you're saying because I have had so many musical theater performers on the podcast. During the pandemic, I directed a bunch of virtual play readings, and a lot of the people I worked with were musical theater performers. And we always talked about how if you're a musical theater performer, people have this idea in your head you can't do just straight plays
yeah,
or something other than musical theater. I feel like it's changed a little bit, but like
yeah.
not a lot. But if anybody out there is listening, musical theater performers can do straight plays. They can do more than just
Yeah,
singing.
we can do anything. I mean, and
Oh,
I always
they
think
do
like,
Shakespeare.
I also really kind of detest that most of us that most people have to box themselves into any kind of category of like, I'm this first, I'm this first, I'm this first, and I'm kind of like, there are so many stories to tell that just need the right person to do it, and you either fit the bill or you don't, and that has nothing to do with exactly, it's like you're an artist before you're anything. And I think like it's very easy to internalize that kind of like outward, the things that people put on us. But I'm like, I'm so proud. I am so proud to be a musical theater performer, and that my it's like it's such a fun life, and it's such a medium that I think so many people actually cannot handle. I think it's one, like I think doing most musicals 8 times a week is such, and I know this from experience, is like
Yeah.
a challenge, a wild challenge that tests every part of you. So I think that, and you know what I think? My hypothesis, I think post Hamilton and the explosion of the careers of those performers and the Ben Platts and these people who really um, kind of transcended from like their musical theater background was really their kind of jumping point into more mainstream media. And I think like the fact that fans and people, like, all of a sudden Broadway performers are so accessible by way of social media. So I think it's like it's a very exciting and like ripe time to be part of the Broadway sphere for sure.
And I will say again, piggybacking on what you're saying, there's a quote I love from Laura Linney, which I'm going to age myself. But when like Facebook, you can put quotes on Facebook.
Mm-mm.
The
Oh, I
quotes, yeah.
remember.
One of the quotes I put was from Laura Linney, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it's something like, never think you're just one thing because nobody's just one thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
precisely. No, I think it's what a limiting belief. Like there are so, from one show to the next, it's gonna be a whole different chapter of your life, using up a whole different part of your brain. Like
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's an incredibly liberating feeling.
Mhm.
Um, when, at least for me, that mold was kind of broken by way of somebody else saying yes to me.
Mhm.
But I wish that I had kind of freed myself from that on my own earlier. I think I probably would have been a little bit more brave
Mhm.
um, in attempting, other mediums outside of the ones that I was more comfortable in.
Well, do you think that in life things come to you when they're supposed to?
Yes. Yes. I think that there's a lot of different ways, especially people who work in entertainment.
Mhm.
We have our different like idioms and things that keep us peaceful.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that definitely, but it comes with a caveat, like as long as you are in my mind and what I tell myself, I'm like, as long as you are hustling, like as long as you're putting the work in and like moving, from a place of like moving with a good heart, like then the right thing will not pass you by. And I've had many instances now of like, of like a decade of basically doing this professionally. At this point now, you're kind of like, okay, that kind of is true. And when one door closes, like don't bat it down, because there's so much happening at any given moment that could totally change your life.
And where does your motto "fuck 'em" come into play? And
Oh my God. Oh my God, this is so funny because I just the other night at work, I'm assuming you saw that in some of my pictures from Gatsby.
I didn't because we are going to talk about Gatsby because one of my best friends is now obsessed with you because he was so lucky to get to see Gatsby and you were by far her favorite in the show. So she also wanted me to tell you that. And I said, "Do you want me to ask Soleil anything?" She said, "I want to know when she's going to play Myrtle again." And I said,
Yes.
"Maybe she should just do a one-woman show of Gatsby." And she said, "That would be great."
Listen, I would be beside myself to get to do any version of Gatsby again. I mean, listen, that goes right into our, the right when the right things happen at the right time. And I think with at any step in the developmental process for something, you kind of have to have in the back of your mind a knowing that it might be the last time you get to do it.
Yeah.
And not that that's the case with this show, but most and all journeys to Broadway are storied, I think.
Yeah.
And this one is no different in that there is really, I think everyone who's ever been attached to it knows that it's just incredibly special. And I think that this material really has the potential to be a landmark piece of art for Broadway and for the world, for the like. I just think that everything that we're talking about in the show, and the way that the care, the painstaking care that was taken to really adapt F. Scott Fitzgerald's ideas and really truthfully, and really say something about our country right now. I felt so, it was one of the most fulfilling experiences that I've had. And playing that role, I think kind of, in my experience developing shows and creating shows, it has pretty much, there's always, I have yet to not have some sort of heartbreak attached to that. But that's okay, that's what it is. And like the gift really is yours to borrow every time. And I loved playing that role and so much. And I had a real sense of like, you don't, if this is the last time you get to do it, don't have any regrets don't leave any stone unturned. And so I really I feel like I took my whole self and just like threw myself at that experience in that role. But I loved doing it. And I think I kind of like stepped into a new kind of version of myself and my life. Like I kind of went from hungry young girl, literally, to, like grieving mother, woman who has survived a bit. I turned 30 last year, and I think it's an interesting time in any actress's life when you're kind of like, okay, like, and I'm 5'10", like I don't really come off as like a young, you see, like you go one day you're Eurydice, and then you're Myrtle, and then you're Satine, and they're literally fake plucking gray hairs out of your wig, and you're like, okay, please, but all that to say that I
That's why
felt,
I get my roots done. So
listen,
that's
we
why I'm
all,
not a natural redhead. That's why, like, that's when I started going gray, I said to my stylist, it's time to change it. Like,
no, I've
go
I and
ahead.
I feel, and but I think, and I think that in the back of my mind I was like, what is that going to feel like throughout my 20s? Like, what is that going to feel like to, as things change and as roles change and as you become right for other things and not right for other things. And what I'm finding is that these roles, the Myrtles and the Satines, and I mean, I've played roles, and the Evitas, like the meat and potatoes is in the women who are in their 30s by such a huge margin. These are the roles that you can really sink your teeth into, and just chew on. The ingenues that are just utterly tethered to some male protagonists are just a lot. They're beautiful and they're fun, and you feel beautiful and they feel fun, and then you get a Myrtle Wilson and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
this is about exploring some things that are really really real, that I'm barely even familiar with maybe at this point in my life. But yeah, and within that also, I think there's so much, the way that you, like, I feel like I'm just know myself well enough to actually approach any role at this point in my life. And I think the kind of like the fuck up mentality, it's just advice that I was given many years ago that I'm finding is the only steadfast rule, to come into my life, because, you know, there's something hugely empowering, to trusting yourself and your process, and saying, like, hey, I know that I'm doing my best. I know that I'm leading with a good heart. And if if that doesn't work for you, yeah,
Mhm.
fuck it. It allows everything to kind of like roll off your back. Yeah, it's just like that is from a place of like, when I say that, it's not like, oh, fuck them. It's more of like
Yeah.
a, hey, oh, that person doesn't, oh, vibe, okay, whatever, doesn't
This is
matter.
like another version of like, thank you next, pretty much.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just kind of like, there's gonna be, especially, and I've been saying this to my my co-star to John Cardoza, who I think is just the most special, incredible human, and
Also, just a great, like the cast right now, when I saw it a few weeks ago, I was like, this cast is like fucking great. He's a
thank
great Christian. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think he's like I feel so lucky to have this process with him, and part of what comes with like coming into these kind of juggernaut big commercial things is that, someone is filming you every night and putting some comparison of you to somebody else online. And so we knew that this experience for us was going to come with a lot of, perception that was outside of our control. And that's fine. And that's something that, like, I learned when I did Hadestown and in general. And the more it's kind of like, your anxieties and your performance anxieties start to shift. I think like at first when you first are starting, it's like you've got something to prove and it's just the audience in front of you. And then as you start to trust yourself more, and it's not as much about the actual performing, but the kind of like pressure you put on yourself to deliver what other people assume are coming in to see you do. And I think one of the best ways to kind of deal with that is just like, wait, no, like I've been doing what I do for a very long time. I put in a lot of work, and like, all right, people are gonna talk about me on the internet, good or bad. Like there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do, and you could be doing the best job in the world, like the biggest, and whatever it is, we cannot save ourselves from the endless
Yeah.
perception of people on the internet, especially. And so just kind
Yeah.
of like, hey, so we keep each other grounded in a
Yeah.
big way that way, but it's being like, hey, fuck them. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. If
Yeah.
someone didn't love your performance tonight, it's fine. Like
Yeah.
life
I
is
think
fun.
also at the end of the day, it's your version of the character. And I feel like
Yes.
sometimes theater goers. And I also like when I in my youth, I would be like, oh, now that I'm older, um, it is, but I'm just like, they're amazing, they're incredible. Like you shouldn't compare because each performer is different and they're going to play the role differently.
Yes.
And they might not be your favorite person
Yeah.
who played that role, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. Or like,
100%. And I
yeah,
think there's also a sort of it's I like to think Nicole Scherzinger, she posted on her, it was a little clip of her that went very viral among the Broadway community, where she said like, Broadway performer, this is the Olympics of performing. And I'm like, and I couldn't agree more, but it's kind of like it's the Olympics of performing, where your event is every night of the year pretty
yeah,
much, and you have to the assumption is that you will get gold every night. And I think it's hard for people to wrap their head around what that means sometimes if they don't have the experience of doing it, because it's like most people don't feel amazing every day despite their best efforts.
mhm,
People on Broadway have all kinds of, like, if you get injured, if you get a head cold, if you are someone who's dealing with any sort of chemical imbalance in your brain, like everyone is just like, it's a bunch of humans just like absolutely trying their best in what is ultimately and definitely an incredibly unsustainable
yeah,
lifestyle at the end of the day. And so it's a crazy, and at the, it's been a long time now that Instagram has existed and TikTok and whatever, but it's like your performance can't come with the disclaimer of like, I had food poisoning last night and my voice doesn't feel great today, and I'm actually like, my heart is pounding because I know that someone's going to film me on a day where like I really can't miss today, and this might be a performance that I really wish didn't exist on the internet, but it's still, a performance that it's like it's such a like tough thing to gauge. It's like we don't get paid if we're not at work. We don't have the same like fallback that a lot of people in
yeah,
like a normal job have. And so, there's a constant negotiation between your body, your bank account, and your ego
yeah,
to be like, okay,
yeah.
like what am I okay with? Am I okay with this performance being out in the world?
Mhm.
Aside from just like the live, ephemeral exists in people's memory and they know your intention and they know the feeling versus like some voice memo in someone's pocket of a day where you're like, oh man, like the barometric pressure totally fucked up my throat. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that people can just, because I'm like the voracious, like appetite for Broadway content and the love that we get is so beautiful. Um, and I just hope that people can, if there's someone listening here who is, of the mindset that everything should exist on the internet after, like, I think bootlegs are something we're never going to get away from, but I just hope that people can remember, like, we're not robots and we're trying our best
Yeah.
and
We're
sometimes
human.
we're human.
We're human. People,
Mhm.
it happen. I'm curious because you mentioned a lot that you guys are aware that people are going to be filming and people
Yeah.
are going to be voice memoing the
Yeah.
performances. Is that a discussion that, I mean, I'm ignorant to this, but do a lot of performers have discussions backstage about like, oh, somebody's performing, someone's recording tonight probably, or someone's voice memoing, or did you,
Yeah.
because I know that you mentioned Hadestown, it's a thing. Did you find that with like a lot of shows as of late or throughout your career?
Well, now it used to be like, oh, that's annoying. Oh, that's so ballsy. Oh, we can see them, I'm gonna tell the house manager to tell an usher to go deal with that. And now it's just like it's so rampant. Like it's just expected. I assume that someone is filming me every day from multiple angles, Like that is just kind of par for the course at this point. Like I feel like if it was going to bother anyone, then you're going to be so bothered forever at this point. And
Yeah,
I think sometimes I'm very grateful for
yeah,
there are certain really iconic videos of all kinds of people that I'm so happy exist because someone totally broke the rules. And
yeah,
so I don't hate it necessarily. Um I just hope for the sake of all of us that if you are going to put things on the internet of us without our permission, without asking us, that it is a representation of us that we can feel proud of and that we can feel that isn't going to be something that is humiliating or embarrassing or like a detriment to our careers, like one person's not great day that someone decides to put on the internet for whatever reason. Like I hope they understand that the effect on that one individual is so much worse than like the good whatever sense of whatever it might be that someone has from just like posting something because they want to. It's like there's a person on the other end of that. There's a
yeah,
human, and it's like most of us on Broadway. I'm like, we're not. Most of us are not like I'm not famous, like I'm a regular, degular person, and I see it. And it's like you are inviting like the comment section into our lives that we didn't ask for. And it's a bummer. It's a bummer to see negative things. It's amazing to see wonderful things, but it's a complicated thing. If that answered your question, I think I strayed kind of far.
fine. We can stray. Do you want to talk about? You want to pick a random topic to talk about right now? You can go ahead.
Well, I can talk. If you haven't picked up, I'm a wildly tangential person. I'm a yapper, as they say.
I am too. That it's so funny because I even like said to my therapist last week, I'm like, I'm a talker, so I just like go off on tangents.
You
So
know
it's
what
fine. Like I think that's why you and I get along so nicely.
I mean?
All good. Um, so let's back like I guess because we kind of like discussed a lot of things within like the first few minutes. So let's start from the very beginning, Solea.
Sure.
Where are
Uh-huh.
you from?
I love this question. I usually say Seattle. My family moved around a lot when I was very young. My parents are anthropologists and they were starting at an NGO, or they're part of it when they were grad students at UCLA. So I was born in Zimbabwe actually, and then when I was like really little, we moved to Mozambique, and then from Mozambique we went to Los Angeles, then Los Angeles back to Mozambique, then to Cleveland, Ohio until I was like 9, and then Seattle. So Seattle's where I have the vast majority of my life memories from 5th grade on.
Yes. So what got you interested in performing?
I started playing violin when I was
Five,
like,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Five? Yeah.
when I was little, and I have parents that are, very, of course, academically minded, but also, the kind of people that like before grad school, my dad was like in punk bands in the East Village, and my mom was, taking class at Alvin Ailey every day. Like it, they are creative people, and they are people who their life is the study of people and culture. And I think that informed my life more than I knew at the time. And they were mostly just like, follow what you want. Their only caveat for me as as professors was just like, you need to get a college degree, and wherever it is that you want to go. Like my parents just paid off their student loans, I think like 2 years ago. I actually managed to pay mine off last year as well, which was kind of this major family, like we just
You guys
felt
have a party?
yeah, we have not thrown a party, but we need to. And
Yeah.
and because we and to be able to do that with my art, with like, with the life, just felt like I think I that all of this has continued to work out is just like it blows my mind a little bit. I'm like on my most jaded days, I'm like, girl, you are doing what you set out to do. And so I went from just like a kid who loved music to then I knew I loved to sing, and then I knew I loved people. And I think is just like I am a at the end of the day, like I think what I love most about this life is that it's just really fun. When it's good, it's so good.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I went to theater camps and felt, for the first time like, oh my God, I'm with a bunch of people who are like me,
Mhm.
and was lucky enough to go to a high school with an incredible theater program. And then it just kept on being, there was never another thing. Like I don't remember it even really being a push, honestly. It was just like this continues to be the thing that is the next right step in my life. And yeah, wow, I don't know if maybe I've put it like that before, but now when I think of my childhood, and just like it just kept on being the thing that I liked and loved most. It's just like, yeah, this is what I'm gonna do for sure.
Yeah. So what made you decide on the University of Michigan?
I had gone to a pre-summer, or like a pre-college, like it's the summer of my junior year, going into senior year, this program called Impulse, which is the pre-college program at Michigan. And I just like loved it. Because I'd heard from, there had been a few people from my high school who'd gone to Michigan, so it was kind of like that's the place. And it is. I take so much pride in having gone to that school and having gotten into that program, because I think the people who come out of, a lot of Michigan people work quite a bit, and you pretty
Yeah.
much can't find a Broadway show without maybe, at least one of us. Um, and I think it's just a school that for the right people, like I think deciding to do musical theater when you're 17 years old, like,
Yeah.
this life is not for everyone, nor should it be. But I think that Michigan, especially coming from a household of parents who really just hold education in and of itself to such a high regard, to get to go to like a university that had such a, it's like it's not an easy school to get into in general. Like I think they probably actually lower the academic standards for the School of Music, but it's just a really wonderful. It is like a really like academically a really amazing place to be, like if you're going to study anything else. But the philosophy there, that like you are you're getting conservatory style training, and it's really intense. Like I've never been busier or more tired than when I was in college, because if you're a musical theater major, your days from 8 to like midnight are packed. And I think it's a very like self-driven program. Like you're gonna get in what it's not really like a handhold program. It's just like you're going to come in here, and if you're one of the people that worked your ass off in college, you're going to be someone who is ready for the real world. And they give you a lot of freedom to double major, to minor, to study abroad for a semester. They really don't encourage you to leave to work. Like that's not what, at least when I was there, like I think Brent Wagner is one of the most under celebrated people probably in this industry. And he like I should email him today just to be like, thank you for instilling principles that I didn't even realize would end up being such tenets of like who I am at this point, of like, just on the first day, the day that you're auditioning, they'll say just like, we're not looking for the next like Audra McDonald, we're not looking for the next Adina, like we're looking for you. And this program is about like finding out what kind of artist you are. And I think like for me, it was just the perfect place to be. Yeah, whoa, I see. Not for a long time. But yeah, I really,
Yeah. Listen, the more information you give, the more informative it
yeah.
is. We love that. I also love hearing like people's stories and journeys. So I'm just like sitting here really enjoying myself. So please talk as much as you want. So when did you go to London to study at the RADA or
Yeah.
the
I studied there. I just knew that I wanted to. All the people in the program who had gone just said it was the most amazing experience. And I remember thinking during my time at school, like after my sophomore evaluation, like I was like, I feel so solid in my abilities as a vocalist. And I know the kind of roles that I want to do. Like I was looking at people like Jessie Mueller and Audra McDonald and like and kind of knowing like I'm surrounded by, the people here who dance have danced since they could walk.
Mhm.
And I just don't see in the next 2 years of my time at this school becoming someone who will be like, confidently kicking their face on a Broadway stage. I have like such an incredible, deep respect and honor and reverence for dancers. My boyfriend is like the best dancer in the
Oh yeah,
world.
I saw him in Gypsy. I know what's up.
Right? You
Again,
know,
when I met you on that, this sounds like so inappropriate, but like when I met you on that street corner,
yeah.
I said to him like you were great in Gypsy.
Yes, I remember. Yes,
Yeah.
and so but like I was just kind of like, you know what? My skill set, I am not gonna make a living as a dancer on Broadway. Like that is not,
Well, if it makes you feel any better, you do get to kick up your legs
you know what I mean? Hey,
at Moulin
it's
Rouge. So
yeah,
you do get to do a little bit of something. And you do have
absolutely.
like the single ladies, Satine's
Yeah, we have a little bit of
number.
it. And so
Yeah.
it's like, so all that to say, not that I don't love, not that I don't love to get to dance, but in that way of like, I think that is a lifelong, like for the dancers that the dancers that I'm surrounded by at Moulin Rouge, like that is a discipline, that is a lifelong discipline that at that point I was like, okay, for the roles that I want to do, for the work that I want to do, I need to feel a lot more confident as an actress. And it seemed like I was like, okay, amazing. Like I got to go abroad. I'll study Shakespeare for a semester and just like I'm not gonna think about Broadway for half of a year, and I'm going to be around a different kind of artists and other kinds of other types of students who maybe have different goals. And it was such an amazing, like I think everyone should, any college student who has the ability um, to to do that should, because it really just like blows your mind to like I remember throughout college, especially, at that point I was what, 19, like I was like Broadway, 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 Broadway. I was so tunnel vision towards, just this one destination in Midtown. And then you go abroad and I took an amazing class where every week we saw a different show in somewhere in London. And like the London fringe theater scene, like the least interesting things were happening in the commercial space there. Like every like I just, you see these mind bending like unbelievably creative, like most amazing performances you've ever seen. And you're like, oh my God, like I had such a limited view of what kind of artist I could be or what kind of art I could make. And then you go abroad and you study something else and you realize that you've had all these blind spots within even just like what's motivating you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so, I mean, like, and I will say, Rada has, I think, churned out some of like like, it's crazy going to like any show in London, like you will find Rada graduates.
Mhm.
Um, and so for the American students there, it was a little bit like, oh, okay. Like, so you guys want to try Shakespeare? And so, I think it definitely, like the students there, like if I could do this all over again, I would like love to be a
Mm.
graduate
Did you
student.
like go back there and were you like, oh, just check out like my PBS best performance or like,
Oh my God.
yeah.
I hope
Sorry
they
guys.
I hope they saw. I
You
would
see me at like Shakespeare in the Port Park. I just said pork.
Shakespeare in the Pork.
Shakespeare in the
Absolutely.
Park, Shakespeare in the Park with the raccoon. Did you
No,
not see like the final performance of Hamlet before they like shut the Delacorte down for a year? No?
do you see that? No, no, believe me, to have like, because in my mind I was like, amazing. This experience definitely made me feel a lot more confident as an actress for sure. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows if this will ever happen? So for it to be that, I
Mhm.
am telling you, like, I still kind of pinch myself, and that is immortalized
Mhm.
in like, and then when it popped up on Instagram, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
wow, this is just like this gift that keeps on.
And I have to say, like I sat on my couch, it's right behind me, which you can't see. And I just like I sat on my couch and I watched it and I so enjoyed it so much on PBS. I think I enjoyed it more actually because as someone who like was sitting far up, uh,
Mhm.
it was more, I don't want to say concentrated, but because you weren't outside, you got to concentrate more on what was happening on the
Yes.
screen. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed
Yeah.
it so much. Not again, one of the best Hamlets I've seen. Um, but like I enjoyed it so much more like watching it again on TV.
Oh my God, I'm so glad. And to get to see those performances, like that was incredibly humbling, honestly, to be on stage with actors of that caliber. Like I just think Atu Blankson like I'm I think he deserves just the world in his career. And I think like he's done unbelievable things, and I just hope that people continue to recognize him and put him front and center um in everything he does, because that was like one of those amazing experiences where you were like, I am the least qualified here of these people. And that feels amazing. Oh my God, can I
Yeah.
tell you? Like, just to be like, okay, and the way Kenny Leon runs a room, like everyone's there every day. You're watching everyone work, you're seeing everyone's process. And I think that was probably, that was a really life-changing experience for me.
Do you ever feel imposter syndrome or did you feel that at all with
Oh
that?
my God. Yeah, yeah. So Hamlet came, the potential of Hamlet came like not too soon after our closing notice for Almost Famous.
Which
So,
I promise we'll get into because it's one of my favorite movies.
oh yeah, and so I was kind of, and at that time I was what? Yeah, that was like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I had been, it was my first really real heartbreak, I think, of that magnitude of like really understanding like this business will break your heart kind of thing, of like you work so hard on something and then it takes up all this time in your life and you have so many dreams about what that time in your life is going to be like. And now I know, and ultimately and incredibly, I'm really grateful to have had that experience because it was really formative. Um, but it was during that time when I was like, oh my gosh, like I really don't know what's next. And then to get an email, like, with knowing that your show is closing soon and that, you're gonna be out of work, and just kind of having this sense of like, man, like wondering what hand you might have had in something's failure. Like it's just like your mind is just like, and then to get an email of like, Kenny Leon saw you in this role, saw you as Penny Lane, and now wants to, like, I think I may have been like the one person that he saw for this production. And so like you never know who's watching, and you never know, like, and all that to say, like kind of what I said at the beginning of our conversation of like, if that's the one time that you get to do it, like now because of that experience and knowing what came from it was like the next thing that was just like this unbelievable gift, it was just, yeah. So finding out about Hamlet coming off of like this commercial theater um experience, I definitely, like, I was like, I haven't done a straight play in my professional life. I'd done a film actually, and in 2021 I had done a Jazzman's Blues, and so I was like, okay, I'm not totally, this isn't a
I have to
complete.
say, like, total side note, as someone who like has interviewed so many people and has a very big entertainment knowledge base, it pissed me off so much watching an interview with you with this guy on the red carpet at like one of the film festivals. And he's like, I drew a photo of you. And you're like, oh, thanks. And he goes, so who do you play in the movie? And he's like asking you out of ignorance because he had
Right.
like no idea who you were. And it just like drove me crazy because I'm like, you're about to interview somebody who's in this film and you claim you drew a photo of her and you don't know who she is or like what she
That's
plays in this
strange.
movie. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just like it irked me so much.
I appreciate you being
Yeah,
on my behalf.
of course.
Absolutely.
And you were so gracious about it. And you're like, oh, thank you for the photo. This is great. And like, oh, I played this person. It was
Right. I know
oh,
it's
poor girl.
yeah, no, where was I? I don't even know where we
Thank you.
were.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so oh yeah, yeah. So you asked about imposter syndrome. So like,
Yeah.
yes, I was coming in to that process with a bit of a broken heart, I think, because it was like in my mind we would have been like gearing up to do
Mhm.
things for the Tonys or whatever, all these things I had dreamed of, and but like that experience of like coming in, and I say that was one of the most fortifying experiences because, Kenny Leon, I think, like, if you really look at his actors always get nominated. Like it's just like the shows that he directs, like the performances are just always excellent. And I think he does a really good job at assembling um, a cast. And I think he does a really beautiful job at guiding you towards a performance that you feel really proud of. But he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's tough, and his love language, I think, um, is can sometimes come in the form of like really of testing you.
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking, coming into this already feeling a little bit like, I never thought that I would be doing I just didn't think that Shakespeare in a professional capacity was going to be a part of my story necessarily. And then here I was, and I was doing it with all these other actors who've done it before, who are so much older than me and so incredible. And oh my gosh, so yes, the imposter syndrome was raging, but it was kind of like, having already gone through this experience and being in the midst of processing what it means for a show to close and for something to happen. And then kind of thinking in my mind, okay, like, and if someone's kind of being hard on you in the room in a way that you're like, okay, what do I do with this? And it was during that process of being like, okay, like ultimately, if I don't do a great job, like the worst thing that happens is my people don't like my performance, my ego might be bruised, but I will be okay. The show closes, I actually am okay. I got a note that made me feel self-conscious. I am okay. And not only am I okay, I can take it, I can become fortified, and I can become better. It's like to I think so that's when it changed. There was something that changed in the way that I think about you know, hardship or whatever. Like
Mhm.
those really are the moments where you are going to grow the most. And I think of that year and the time, during Almost Famous and like post our closing notice and in between and leading up to Hamlet and moving through all that, like have as being some of the most formative like months that really changed how I think about myself and my life. And that like when you're in the midst of something really tough, ultimately is the only, not the only, but those are the moments that you really just come out of a better person if you let it, if you see the moment for what it is and recognize that this is an opportunity for growth and not time to don't sit in the despair, like see where
Yeah.
figure out where you can the fortification that comes through going something
Yeah.
unpleasant, And so I'm so grateful for that time. And it was like as magical as everyone says to be there and to get rained on and to see the raccoons and just to get so close to a group of people and like being like, oh my gosh, like this is like these are the dressing rooms that like Meryl Streep was in here once at this age doing this and like being like, wow, these are like this is hallowed ground and so yeah, it
Yeah.
was just it was the best and it changed me for sure.
So when you mentioned him as like a harder director, and I like it popped into my head because I knew somebody in the show and I said hi to them after, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, because we got the show under less than this time. Can
Yeah.
you, like buy us dinner?" And so you guys were all going to this like restaurant because you had the show less than like a certain amount of time. So yeah, that was
Oh,
very funny.
we were on a mission. He bought us all dinner. He paid our tab that night because we were like, he was like, you guys, like you need to, people are gonna fall asleep if you don't pick up the pace. So just keep it going. And then we did. And we exceeded his challenge
Yeah.
and we all had martinis on Kenny Lee on that
That's
night.
great. Yeah, I was there that night. You guys were all like, "Yeah, we're gonna go. Who's going?" It was
Yes.
very funny. So I think I was trying to remember because I've known about you for a couple of years. And I was trying to remember how and why. And I think it was because like many a people, I do enjoy Jeremy Jordan.
Oh, totally.
And
Well, among us in that.
he was actually the Tony I saw when I saw the revival of West Side Story.
Okay.
And I had so many people like, oh my God, you're so lucky because that was before he was like Jeremy Jordan. So I think my first introduction to you was actually via YouTube,
Uh-huh.
played Maria in
Yes.
West Side Story at the Hollywood Bowl. So I know that you were chosen to do that part. Do you want to talk about like how it came about? Because that's been years ago, but I mean, at least to
Yeah.
me, I think that was my introduction to you.
No, that was a crazy moment. So I had that came into my life and like God, these first like that first year and a half of my career, I think really set up in my mind that things would come a lot. No, I shouldn't say that. Here, I'll just the way
Yeah.
things happen. I had just come to New York and I had been sending in tapes for like Hamilton and Wicked.
Mm.
I had done, and then I came to the city and I was like, I had signed with a manager before I graduated. I
To know
showcased.
though, because you have like such a great vocal range. Who for Wicked were you auditioning for?
Oh, for Alphaba.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you have a beautiful soprano voice.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't get to use her
Yeah, I
as
was
much.
going to ask if you, because you were also, one of my favorite musicals is also Piazza, and you got to
Oh,
play Clara, which
yes.
again, we will talk about.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I even wrote down like, because I wanted to ask you about your soprano, because you do, like I said, have this beautiful soprano voice, but you haven't.
I had a really Melody Racine, my voice teacher in college, just a magical, like just was like, I got there thinking I was like a pop rock singer, and then she was like, "No, you're a soprano, and we're gonna like get you a classical foundation." And then I played Sarah Brown as that was my big senior year role at the Power Center in Michigan. And so I was like really in my soprano bag right when I had graduated from Michigan, and I think like my very first audition in the city was for Hamilton, and like, right after that I got it, and so I like knew that I was going to be doing the tour. It was like 8 months out. Like I just had this like kind of amazing secret
Yeah.
that like my reps could kind of just be like, by the way, she's gonna be doing this soon. And it kind of like the kind of fairy dust of that show at that time, it was like before the Tonys were like the hype was just like growing, 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 growing. And so, to be this kid right out of college who had booked like Eliza was going to do that. Like it just made people trust me with things that like were too, like I was it's still like when I look back, I'm just like, wow, like the Hamilton effect on my life at that time before I had even done it, like except room in a rehearsal, um, was huge. And someone had actually dropped out of this West Side Story at the Hollywood Bowl. And I think with the casting, someone had, I think the way they do that, it's usually they just like kind of offer it to people. And someone had come to my manager and been like, "Do you have anyone? Like, we need to find a Maria." And then they just sent videos of me playing Sarah Brown to Gustavo. And like, my manager's been like, there it's for what Maria at the West Side, like at the Hollywood Bowl. Do you have any clips or anything? And I was like, do they need me to audition? Like, do they need me to sing anything? She's like, just send me clips. And I was like, and I didn't think about it again. I was just like, oh, okay, that's not gonna happen. No way. And then the next day she's like, all right, so how do you want to play? Like, do you want to play Maria at the Hollywood Bowl? And I was just like, I was gooped and gagged, honey. I was so nervous, and I just meant like every day. Like I came in so prepared for that. Like we only had 3 days of rehearsal, and I was like with Karen Olivo and who had won a Tony for Anita and Jeremy, like all these people who had played the role.
Yeah.
Um, and for an 18,000 seat house with the LA Phil, like I was just like, this is so crazy. And I think the fear of it really kicked in like the utmost professionalism, and then it ended up being like the most amazing experience ever. Oh my God. It was like addictive. I was like, everything else is gonna feel boring after this, because the rush of going out to like that house and hearing your voice, um, just like kind of like sing into the mountains with the LA Phil. Like I was just like, this is what dreams are made of, It was like a true, but yeah, kind of one of those mind-blowing things of like right place, right time, things come to you, and how do you meet the moment? And I loved working with Jeremy. Oh my God, I think he is just like just one of the greats of obviously like just that voice is just like unparalleled, and I felt very very honored to get to be on stage with all the people in that cast because they were phenomenal. But he's just a very giving scene partner and duet partner,
Mhm.
and we had a really really good time. And when a video came up like on TikTok of us singing that together the other day, and I was like, oh my God, you never know you're a child when you're a child, and then you're looking at it and you're like, oh my God, you were so brave and so little at the
I
time.
I watched it yesterday on YouTube. It's fine.
You did. It
Well, no,
worked.
it's so funny because like whenever I interview people, they're like, "You did your research?" I was like, "Of course." I go on like YouTube, I go everywhere. But
I
yeah, no, it was fun. Listen, I watched it. I enjoyed it. I have yet to see, I don't have TikTok, but I have yet to see like any actual show clips of you in Moulin Rouge, if that makes you feel any better.
It does actually.
There's
I'm
curtain
happy
call
about that.
videos of you where you and
I
John jump off the
expect
stage.
comedy.
Super fun.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
no, I have not seen like any performance Satine videos of you yet.
that is music to my ears.
Yeah. Watch it happen now as soon as this
It,
like
it
podcast episode.
truly, I know we're probably someone's going to be inspired to be like, well, let me take to TikTok
It's okay.
immediately,
I really like manifesting. So like what I'm manifesting for you now is
please.
like New York Philharmonic
Ooh,
performance of something.
yes.
And like
That
bring Jeremy Jordan back in. Why not?
I would love to. Honestly, I have been so spoiled with my leading men. Like I have had unbelievable scene partners like in the past few years. Like I've had John and Jordan Fisher and Reeve Carney and Atu and Casey Likes, and I'm just like the boys I've gotten to sing with
Yeah.
have all been just like such artists of such an amazing caliber. So I'm very consider myself very lucky for that.
And Jordan's coming back into, well, he's going in,
It
so it's
is.
like a little mini Hadestown reunion. So it's
It
going to be fun to have
is.
hear
Oh
you guys
my gosh.
sing those
Mhm.
songs together.
I can't wait to sing with him again. He's such a like he's a hugely giving and just someone who loves music and loves to
Yeah.
sing and loves to perform. And in Hadestown we got to sing together a little bit, and in Rouge we're singing together a whole lot. We have
Yeah.
quite a bit of duetting to do. So I am so excited.
I saw him in Hadestown like sometime last summer. I don't remember. And there was one point where he was singing, and I literally said to myself, "Okay, sir." Like,
Yes. Yeah. No, it's crazy.
yeah.
I love I think that just Jordan is someone who he's a really hard worker, and he's I think it's kind of rare
Mhm.
to meet people who are like, "Oh no, I'm gonna give you full tilt commitment every." I mean, actually, no, what am I saying? Every man that I just listed, all the people that I've gotten to play opposite, are
Mhm.
these people who are so committed to excellence every night. And
Yeah.
Jordan, like I got to go see his final show, him and Maya and Philip, and it was there after being there for a while. And just seeing that his options were higher, and that his commitment to the story was even deeper. And I'm like, that to me is the sign of a true artist, where you're just like, you're still every night, you're like, okay, what can I deepen? What can I make better? And I think that Jordan's gonna be the first Black Christian on Broadway, and maybe ever. Um,
So,
and I just like, I feel very proud, like we're these two mixed babies once again leading a Broadway show together, which I like. I don't know if I ever saw that. I've never seen that.
yeah.
I've never seen like two people like me playing opposite each other and falling in love on a Broadway stage. And so to get to do that, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. That's so like to get to do that twice is
Yeah.
really, really special. So I'm very excited. I really can't wait to get to do that with him.
How long do you have like a year contract with Rouge?
I am lucky
Or
that
you
they
just not on
asked
the
me to stay a little
system?
longer.
Oh,
I don't know if I'm allowed to say when I'm done, but I'm
you
going to
can-
be there for a much longer time than initially was I was supposed to. So,
and that's great because, like I said, and I just want to say, my biggest problem I always have with Moulin Rouge is how Satine dies. Because depending on the Satine, it doesn't sound like she's dying, but you sound like you're dying. So I greatly, uh,
I appreciate that. And
thank
that
you.
was important to me. Yeah, I was like, your inside like consumption, like I don't think if people we don't really know, like I don't know if people know that consumption is, the modern day tuberculosis.
Yeah,
But for the people listening,
because I'm now coughing,
as
but
we cough, no, yesterday I like because it's dry, I like came off stage and I was like, oh, blew my nose and like had like kind of a bloody nose. And my dresser was like, consumption. I was like, oh my God.
did
I'm
you
very
see?
much.
Did you see the when James Brolin hosted SNL and Ariana Grande was the musical guest and they did
Oh yeah.
and then he goes, "Oh
Yes.
my God, you coughed up blood. That's like movie for dying."
Exactly, which is
Yeah,
so real. But also, what people don't know about consumption tuberculosis, like your insides are melting, like your organs are inside you, literally disintegrating. And so, like in my mind, I was just like, if this is her last moment, that means her lungs are gone, y'all. Like
yeah.
she is in an immeasurable amount of pain
Mhm.
and fighting through it, and like she's not going to be getting her words out with
Yeah.
any sort of ease necessarily. So so thank you for saying that. I appreciate
You're
that.
very welcome. And I also I noticed too, are you enjoying life with shorter nails? 'Cause I
You
know
know,
the famous story of like you couldn't get out because of
it
the
was a
long
bummer.
nail.
Like
Yeah,
I will say, yes, I think I love feeling like Rihanna, and I love a long nail, and I love feeling fabulous, and I just think you gesticulate differently. Like I love feeling like Barbara Streisand. Like I'm like there's a reason why she always has her nails long like that. And I think it fits the character, and I think it fits the show. But I can open cans with ease. I can button things with ease. I can, sometimes when you have the long nails, you're like, maybe I can't be an independent woman who don't need no man. Like, and I was like, there's a lot of like simple tasks that
Yeah.
I would ask Kevin to do when I had a longer set of nails. But you know what I will say for gel nails, because I haven't I need to ask around because I've just been getting gel. It makes your nails so thin. So when they do start to find like I want them longer than this, okay?
You can
I
have a conversation, don't worry.
Okay,
Talk
amazing.
about it.
I will say when as soon as they get a little bit longer and I'm like amazing, like I'm just gonna have like a more natural look, but they're gonna be longer, it'll be great. And then they get caught on my fishnets during my quick changes and then they break and then they rip because they're so thin. Yeah, and I'm like, oh God, I'm like, there's gotta be a better
So me personally, I don't like gel on my nail. And I also like don't try, I'm a short nail person.
Okay.
I work better that way. I don't trust to cut and file my nails. So that's when I get my nails done is when they like cut and file
Yeah,
in
yeah.
whatever color. So my birthday was last month. So I wanted to do like the cat eye nail. So
Okay, yes.
gel and they took it off and my nails are just like I mean, you can't see it on the screen, but like looking at my nails, you can see the indents from like the gel and then filing them down. And
Yeah.
I just don't like that feeling. But I know that like some people do like the silk wrap where you like get things dipped.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard about dip and I know that people like it. So that might be my, or like I've heard about Japanese, like Japanese gels, like different. So I'll let you know if I find something that works because I don't like it and they get so sharp. Like they're so thin and sharp and I'm like, and bendy and ugh. Like there's nothing worse than when your nail bends backwards and you're like, oh God, that was terrible.
Well, that happened to me, and I literally thought I broke my nail. I'm like, oh no, my nail is fine. But
Yeah,
I can't.
no, it's
I,
a sensory thing.
yeah.
It's weird.
And also like when your nail grows out, like the gel was growing out and it just looks so weird on your nail,
Mhm,
where it's just
mhm.
like this little like piece of nail polish, but you have like other nail visible.
You know
It's
what
just
I
so
mean?
weird.
There's got to be something better.
Yeah, I'm
But let
sure
me
there
tell
is.
you, as soon as I'm done with this run, I
Like
am,
Cynthia Erivo length nails.
yes, I'm gonna go Cynthia, like you, I'm gonna look unrecognizable. Like I'm gonna like get hair that I don't need to put in. Like I'll probably get just like long braids and something that I don't have to put under a wig ever and long nails and be like, ah, no, I'm nothing has to come off.
I'm gonna channel like your like Cynthia Erivo nails, just like
Yes.
braided
Full
hair.
diva. I'm bringing you as I get some more coffee.
Oh, please. I have a water bottle next to me to refill my hot priest mug whenever I
Mhm.
need it. So, anyway, so we were talking West Side. Where are we now? So, how was it touring the country with Hamilton? You did the first national tour, correct?
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
what was that like, especially because Hamilton was like such a thing?
oh my goodness. Yeah,
Still
I
is, but at the time it was
at the time it was the fandom and we were bringing it to, you know, a side of the country that had
I'll
never
refill
seen
with you.
it.
There we
And
go.
so um that experience was unbelievable. It was just, so I went from being a full-blown Hamilton kind of like super fan pretty much to, like listening to it in the car on the way to class with my roommate every day and thinking to myself like I can't believe like, this I think like seeing Pippa, she was like one of the first like leading ladies that as like a little, very ethnically ambiguous looking person, I just saw myself in her in a way that I felt was really exciting. And so for there to be this show that there was this role that I was like, I know I can do that. Like this is my bag. This is my thing. This is the style that I like to sing in and this is whatever. Like and I just think Pippa's such an incredible actress and like so for to be able to actually then do it. I like, auditioning, I was like, hey, like as the audition process went on and like I was like, okay, then the next step and you're meeting Tommy Kail and Alex Lacamoire and they're like, hey, like we're gonna send you to the show and being like, ah, like I just got free tickets to Hamilton. Like if that's the most that comes from this, then amazing. Like I was just like still I was just like so excited. Just I was like I'm in New York. Like I felt so romantic about New York in that moment. I was like, oh my God, my dreams, whatever. And then when it happened, and then you're like, I would like I've just never been more prepared for anything than that. And um so bringing I mean like I when I say that I've been on tour, like I stayed with that tour for a year, and then my agents were like, you're gonna live in LA and do that and whatever. But the year that I did spend on that tour was two stops. So we were in San Francisco for like half the year, and then Los Angeles for half the year. So it was like the most comfortable, cushy,
Yeah.
unbelievable touring experience that I think a person can really have. Just really like two sit downs in really major cities. And so, like bringing the show to LA, I think that was one of those things where we knew and felt a lot of pride and like, like this team chose us to bring their piece to this total other half of the industry. And we know, how much faith they have in us, that if we are the ones that are bringing Hamilton like to Hollywood. Yeah, I just think like when I see video and like bootlegs of that company, I'm like, damn, we were amazing together. Like, and just in all those artists as individuals, like that my sisters were Emmy Raver Lampman and Amber Iman. Like, are you kidding? We were all so tall and so like those women are forces of nature, and like to have to be flanked by them, like I was in heaven. Like that was my first, I did the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
And then I think, and then did Hamilton, and was just like, I never assumed that I'd be doing so much theater in Los Angeles. And then here I was doing like these dream roles, both in that city. Um, but that was a show that I remember feeling like I, it's so interesting when something becomes so mainstream that it's almost cliched.
Yeah.
And then, like, it took me a while to revisit it, but then, like, doing that show is like with writing, like, when I think someone like Lin-Manuel is like, he is someone with incredible deep reverence for the art form, and is also a performer himself. So I think having like those being like this, a genius, b someone who isn't like everyone else. Like I'm so overhearing people, especially people who are creating musicals, being like, well, I'm not a Broadway person. And I'm like, yeah, I can usually tell because your craft isn't honed, and your show, you can tell, you can tell when the people who are like, I'm not a musical theater person. I'm like, not knowing the history of the craft that you are
Mhm.
attempting is not something to wear proudly,
Yeah.
yeah, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like I'm someone who has like I have a knowledge of the history of this craft, in the way that like when you look at Hamilton, you're like, yes, it is breaking conventional, it's breaking form in some ways, in that it is hip hop. But then in the rest of the craft, you're like, this was just crafted by people who know what the impact that this art form can have when it is at its peak. And that's what I think of Hamilton. And so, to really get to cut your teeth professionally with that kind of material, with a company of that caliber, like I was in heaven. And I just felt like I was like finding new things all the time. And when you have like, I think that show will always be timeless, kind of in the same way that like Songs for New World is like the really amazing pieces of writing that like will always land differently depending on what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And so like I just thought it was like the kind of show where like there was always a new way in emotionally. There was always a new way to connect to it. And I loved it. I loved playing Eliza so much. Like I think it was such a big part of my identity for a while there.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like I think about it, I'm like, wow, like there's another thing where I was like, you don't think of yourself as a kid when you're doing it. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh man, like so I lately have been having these moments of just like, when you almost feel like a big sister to your younger self, and I'm like, you didn't even know how brave you were being, and you were just like standing on,
Yeah.
yeah, when I think of that time, like I just I feel unbelievably lucky. Not a lot of people get to play their dream roles, or like to have that realized is just like something I will never, ever, ever take for granted.
Yeah. Speaking of dream roles, I guess we can just talk about
Sure.
Piazza.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And you know what? I should say, like,
Mhm.
let the record show, like, I have gotten to play, like,
Wait, like you're okay. You have played some great fucking parts.
yes.
You have been so like blessed and lucky, and it's also you're just so talented, and so I'm so happy that somebody, and I don't know you personally, but you seem like a very lovely person. So you also want like I'm friends with Brandon Contreras, who you did Almost Famous with.
Yes.
And they are just like the kindest, most talented person. And I say this about them all the time, where you just want like good things to happen for them. So, I mean, for you, I'm sure many people wish and hope that. And
Oh man, I mean, I hope so. I think, yeah, I don't know what it is necessarily. Like, I think that like I've just been timing has been impeccable,
yeah,
um, in my life. The way that things have just and I say yes to a lot, um, and yeah, I love to do this, and I think when it comes to these various roles, like I just got into a mindset pretty early on of like, don't assume that it's not for you, don't say no to yourself. And
yeah,
I think that that has kind of allowed for um, some really interesting opportunities to come my way, and Piazza being one of them, where it's like you kind of never, if you're not the kind of blonde prototype for that kind of, you're like, I'm not like Kelly O'Hara
yeah.
physically,
Well,
but
it makes you feel better. The original Clara and Piazza was actually Celia Bolger.
yes, I
Yeah.
know that story is so wild to me. Oh my
And Kelly
gosh.
was Franca. And then during the pandemic, they did like a virtual reunion of like her, Victoria Clark, and Matthew Morrison. And
Yeah.
Kelly O'Hara said the first time I never felt like the song, like, oh my God, why am I crying? Sorry. It's my favorite musical. And I just like,
Yeah, no, yes.
whenever I need a good cry, I will listen to the overture of Piazza and just like,
It's everything.
yeah,
No, I'm right there with you. I think that score is like it's pretty like it's literally like what love sounds like. You're just like
yeah,
I think Adam Gettle like just captured like the essence of like why we love musical theater. I think is that like what I always say is like what some writers are able to do is turn the intangible all of a sudden into something that you can hear. You know what I mean? And I think Piazza
mm,
just does that so beautifully, where like just the world that he built and the sound of what it feels like to grow up, and like these two characters that are kind of like, well, one is descend, you have mom on one journey of actualization, and Clara and one, you just like I'm just like, how did you manage to put that into music? How did you manage to turn something that you can barely even describe in words into something, into notes on a page, like,
yeah.
and oh my God, and I got to do that show with Rob Houchen and Renee
I'm
Fleming, and
having, yeah.
these artists that are like, I could not be, that was another one I was like, yes, oh my God, like it had always been on my list, and I was like, I never thought that I would be able to play it. And when I posted about doing it at one point, I put it on my Instagram and
Yeah.
had this caption that just said like, remember, like, brown girls can be Clara too. And
Yeah.
it got the most, like, I had so many, like I've had fan letters that but people have like responded to that kind of, and I was like, heck yes, like if that's part of what I can do as someone who, the identity that I have in this business, if what I
Yeah.
can do is just like crack that door open a bit,
Mhm.
then hell yes, because like uh, to think that like these roles that you love so much are just like totally out of reach for you is a crushing feeling, I think, for a lot of people. And so to be like proof that it's like, no, don't count yourself out. Don't count yourself out. Like
Yeah.
you never know who's just gonna say like, hey, come
Mhm.
be in this version of this. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, and well, I'm ready and I know it. And yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So let me just quickly say what Kelly O'Hara said because we
Yes.
got, like on a Piazza nerd out.
Mhm.
She said she never felt ownership of the song Light in the Piazza until the reunion concert they did at Lincoln Center,
Wow.
which I was there for, and like everyone was just crying. Like especially throughout the second act, I was like it was blurry because I was crying the whole time. And then on my walk home, because I'm like maybe like a 10 to 15 minute walk to Lincoln Center, I overheard a guy on the phone like, yeah, I got tickets for this thing because it was a part of my membership for Lincoln Center. Everybody around me was crying.
He had no idea what he was witnessing.
Yeah. But I will say with Piazza, they did the most recent revival at City Center with Ruth Ann Miles. So they have been trying to open it up, and it has been rumored for many years with Audra McDonald doing it.
Do you understand how much of it like that is? I have dreamt of that. Like I've been trying to manifest getting to do Piazza with Audra McDonald, and I will say it proudly. I've said it on the news, I think twice.
Let's manifest it on this podcast because there are
Yes.
so many things that I have manifested. Somebody said they wanted to do Shakespeare in the Park, and then I was like, why not audition for this? And they're like, I think auditions were late. I was like, well, what about, next time? And I shit you not, like a year, like after I released their podcast episode, they were announced to do Shakespeare in the Park.
There it is. Okay, so
So
here,
yeah,
let's manifest it right now officially.
yeah.
I
I've
need to
manifested Brandon Uranowitz and what's
hear.
his name? Joshua Henry in Ragtime. They just did it at City Center. Manifesting, let's do it. Solea with Audra,
Yes, yes.
Gotcha. Let's do
Universe,
it.
please hear
We'll do
us.
like those blue pans.
I would do
Yeah.
anything. Like I would drop anything to get to do that. I mean, there is something knowing that my partner is on stage with Audra every night is like the coolest thing. She to me is like before Beyonce, before like that's, my hero, capital Hero, like, you
Yeah.
know, she's it for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just even having some proximity to such a legend
Have
is
you met her?
I met her very briefly.
Mm.
Yes, at the at one of the Black Women of Broadway events, which is like the most beautiful event like and thing that happens every year that I feel so lucky to be a part of. Um, Incredible, just like kind of support system for all of us. And I met her and I was like, I think I like turned and there she was. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God. Hi, I'm Slade. So nice to meet you. And she was like, oh, I was just watching a video of you singing Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. And so I was like, all right, Audrey McDonald might have a semi inkling of who I am and I can die happy, you
Yeah.
know?
And speaking of Evita,
Yes.
so Piazza happened. How did Evita happen? Because we're kind of going like a little all over the place with
Yeah.
your
A little
life and
awkward.
resume, which is fine. It happens.
Yeah.
Because you said like you did Almost Famous at the Old Globe,
Hmm.
and then you like got on a plane and directly went into Evita. So
Yes.
how did Evita come to you?
I auditioned. They were on the hunt for their Ava, and it was like this interesting time in my life where like my personal life was totally just like kind of imploding. But my professional life was like popping off. Like I'd been kind of like post Hamilton. I had done and like post like Songs for New World. I was doing a lot of labs and workshops and concerts and one-offs, and I was like, oh my God, I just like I want to do what I do. I want to be in a show. Like I miss getting into costume and whatever. And then all of a sudden I had the most like this was 2019. I had the most like fruitful, like wildly busy time in my life where, I auditioned for Evita, got it, and then was working on Almost Famous, went out of town, went straight into Evita. And that moment in my life, I remember thinking like, you can't mess this up. You cannot mess this up. Like this is a lot of pressure. But like and actually that was the real true genesis of fuck 'em, okay? Because I knew that I was going into a show that means so much to people. Like people don't just like casually like Evita. Like, that's Patty. It's biblical. It's epic and it's hard. And City Center is, I had done two shows there at that point. Like I had gotten to be in the ensemble of Sunday in the Park, and I'd gotten to do Songs for New World. And I was like, okay, the people who come to these shows, like these are theater lovers and the industry. Like it's not really like a touristy, you don't just like happen to go to the city center shows, I don't think.
No, I just like my one of my favorite city center like tweets or whatever I've ever seen actually had to do with Piazza. And they were saying like the hottest nightclub right now in New York is City Center. So
Yeah.
like theater people do take their city center shows like very
Yeah.
seriously.
Yes, and it was at a time like I feel like it had kind of slowed down in like the direct transfer kind of situation,
Yeah.
kind of before like and maybe I'm like wrong, but I feel like the Sunday in the Park that I did that
I
transferred.
saw it. I
Yeah, it
yeah.
was fun. And the kind of but that started kind of like this trend of like
Mhm.
now every show that happens here
It's a
kind
big
of has the
deal. Yeah.
potential to have a life outside of this run. And with Evita, it was like, it was like the gala performance is going to be longer. It was going to be this whole thing. And I was like, I was 25 years old. And I was like, and I had a deep awareness that I had a lot to prove.
Mhm.
Um, and but I was just like, I know I can do this. And Sammy Cannell at the time, she was also 25, and I just remember feeling like, all right, like we are both these key pieces of each other's story right now. And it was like that time in my life where I went from like Almost Famous to Evita to Piazza to this show, Gun and Powder,
Mhm.
that is now going by another name, Wanted, as I'm actually I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it. Anyway, a show that I hold very, very, very close to my heart.
To be
Um,
continued.
yeah, to be continued.
Mhm.
But like it was like it required just such a focus and such a confidence, and like a really just like tuning everything else out and just being like so locked into this and just being like, just learning the daily practice of what it means to believe in yourself, I think. Because it's
Yeah.
fast, they they gave us like 2 extra days, and the show went up in like
Probably
a
like
matter.
a 2 week rehearsal.
Not even. Like
No?
City
Wow.
Center happens really, it was 9 days of rehearsal for
Wow.
like what was really not a concert version of
Yeah.
that show. No one was holding a book.
Yeah.
No one told me it was okay to hold a book. Like I was just like, okay,
I
whatever.
think
Like,
I think it depends on the show because like the recent shows that I've seen, like certain scenes nobody will have the binder, but then other people will have binders in the scene. They're still off book, but they're still carrying the binder.
yeah.
That was also something I realized when I saw Piazza and I had somebody who was in the show come on my podcast. I'm like, I need to know this. I'm like,
Yeah.
within Miles' book, was that the script? And he said yes. And it made me feel so much better because it was driving me crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, no, no. So, like, what people I think don't really realize, I mean, City Center is like, I hope I get to do it a million times more in my life. But it's very, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is scary, because it's happening so fast, and they're like you're getting a New York Times review on pretty much what will ultimately be the second time you ever did it in full costume. Like, like when I think of our time, we had 9 days of rehearsal, and then we had one dress rehearsal where they shoot all the B-roll. Then that night you have your first invited dress, which is like not really that low stakes because it's a million people from the city who are gonna, have opinions that really matter. And then the next day you do it for everyone, and it's a black tie event, and the biggest publications in the world are there to, judge your performance and film your performance as if you've been working on it and creating it with a company and a director for, as long as any other production usually has. And you're like, I met my scene partner a week ago. And so you really just have to be like committed and confident about the choices that you're making. And so that's what, like, so my entrance into that show, I would kind of come behind the this curtain, and I was just like, okay, you've put in the work, you've put in the time, you are
Mhm.
locked and loaded and ready. I felt very beautiful. I was like, I look like her, I feel like her, and I've done all that I can leading up to this moment. And and thinking like, I love what I'm doing, my director loves what I'm doing, my cast is supporting me, and ultimately I can't allow any space for the potential of other people's opinions about this to waver my focus. So you know what? Fuck them. And then go outside and just be like, and that's the most Ava Peron energy that I think anyone can have. If there was anyone who really embodied that energy of like, I am that bitch, and
Yeah.
I will succeed, and I will thrive, and I will use just, the clothes on my body and the brain in my skull and the lipstick on my lips, that was, I think that show to me was really the embodiment of what it feels to tap into the divine feminine, and oh my gosh, well, I keep on talking forever, but this is just my thought about Evita and why people love it so much, and part of why, I think musical theater in general feels like such a safe space for people who don't necessarily feel as accepted or safe in other parts of the world or their corners of society, is that like Evita being a prime example of like the power of femininity being front and center and celebrated. You know what I mean? Like to have like a woman who is staking her claim in the world and doing it by way of you know I mean, she might be a questionable character in history for sure, but she changed the world and she changed her circumstance, um, with her womanhood. And I think that is so, to have it like elevated and, you know, so made to feel so deeply important. Like I was like, oh wow, like that's the power I hold, that's the power we all hold. Like I think that's probably the most like powerful I've ever felt is like being in that dress, and the moments of just like really commanding attention and commanding respect. Like yeah, no, that show and that moment, like people bring that show up to me more than anything else. And I was like, that was just that was a 2 week run, you know? And
Yeah.
so, you know what I mean? If
Mhm.
that's the last time you get to do it, you better have thrown yourself at it with all your
Yeah.
might, because you never know the ripple effect that it's going to have on your life.
Do you ever have like moments at the stage door where people are like, oh, because you mentioned like that's the show that people bring up to you the most. Are there like other performances or shows that you have been in that people have brought up to you where you're like, oh, wow, thanks.
Yeah, yeah, there are. It's like different people bring up different things. I feel like a lot of people who are in college, like people who are pursuing a BFA, um, a lot of them bring up songs for New World because a lot of people sing those songs, and that show just means a lot to people. And I've actually have a good amount of people like I think. the power of Gatsby and
Mhm.
that show had more like people bring it up a lot, and that performance and that show and that role and that music like really stuck with people, I think. And so I get more of that than I would have thought. Of course, there's Hadestown, like there, there's like the Broadway lovers bring up Hadestown, the more like, people who are like, I'm in grad school pursuing this, or like, I really loved Gatsby. And so, you have people like
Yeah.
there's the full gamut, and then the people who are like, the New Yorkers who are like, I saw you in Hamlet.
Mhm.
And then the people who are like, I saw Almost Famous and I'm a total Band-Aid. Like there are, yeah, but I would say lately, mostly it's Evita.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I literally, I only have seen the photos that they release. Other than that, like, I don't have TikTok. So
Yeah.
unless it like appears on my For You page, like, I'm probably not gonna know like anything of Gatsby because I know
Yeah,
they shut that down. They
they
locked up
shut
the
it down.
phones. Like, it's just like shrouded in secrecy.
Yes, which I think was what it was smart. It felt like a security blanket for us, and
Mm.
I think it's like, especially there was so much speculation on the internet about that show, and I get it. Like the major artists, Florence is a major artist, and so are Rachel and Martina and Sonia. Like anything that they put their hands on, people are going to want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that, artists should be given the permission to be imperfect without judgment, and that was really nice for us because that's what development should be. It's you're when you're creating anything, it's shots in the dark until you're like, all right, it's opening out on Broadway, and now we're done, and we're not going to tinker with it anymore. Um, so yeah, yeah, no, I'm glad that they did what they did,
Yeah. So
and it made,
speaking of Almost Famous,
yeah,
let's talk about it. It is one of my favorite movies of all time.
yeah.
Whenever it is on TV, I watch it. I
Mhm.
took a film class in college. I wrote my final paper on that movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when I was 16 and I got my driver's license, I said, if I pass my driver's test, I'm going to buy my. This is also how old I am. I'm not that much older than you, but still. Um, I was like, I'm gonna buy the Almost Famous special edition where it's a theatrical release and the
Yeah,
unedit like the un
director's cut. Yeah,
director said thank you. It's called Untitled because James Cameron originally wanted to call the movie Untitled.
right, right.
Yeah, and it came with a Stillwater CD. So I even have that like sitting somewhere over there.
Oh my God. Okay, so
Yeah.
you really, you know it. You know and love the story.
I'm yes, I am a very big Almost Famous fan. So when I was telling Brandon I was seeing the show, I was like, listen,
Yeah. I'm
like
coming in with,
I don't need to be that I don't mean, and I always try, and I never ever go into a show being like, I'm gonna criticize it. This person didn't like it. But like I don't, that's not my bag. I don't do it. I just go in and enjoy myself. But I was like,
but it means a lot. No, for
fuck it
sure.
up.
Oh, that was, I think with that show, oh, and with that movie,
Yeah.
that was another thing, like different than people who are like different than like fans of Evita, and more like, like a movie being like
Mhm.
something that you can really just, you can turn that on whenever you want, and dive back into that world, and like for, I think that the characters, like I think like William and Penny Lane and the Band-Aids, like for a lot of people who like us, people who art lovers, and people who like, maybe didn't have the best time in high school, like, and I don't want to speak for you, but like I didn't love high school, and
Oh no, I heard, I listened to, or I watched something, and you were like, if I can tell the people I went to high school with. So listen, I had a rough senior year of college, so I completely understand. So like there are times,
because
I'm sorry.
we didn't, yeah, oh sorry, go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
no, I missed what you said. I'm sorry.
Well, all that to say, like, there is, I think that movie
Mhm.
really gives people who might feel like they're on the outside of things this real, hope and this beautiful love story of like,
Mhm.
you just haven't found your people yet, but they're there, and there is a
Yeah.
family that's waiting for you that is going to embrace you, and there are magical people that are going to change your life, and you can make a decision and just go, like you can do that and you can choose your destiny. And like Cameron Crowe is, I think, one of, talk about someone who chose his destiny from the age 15 on, like
Yeah.
that is really his story, and that this it meant so much to him. And like there's so much, I think ultimately like our what it ended up feeling like towards the end of that time, like Cameron's mother, Cameron lost his mom, who is she's a massive driving force in his life and in this story and this show. And that that cast felt was so close. Everyone in in that cast was so close to each other and so fun. Like, oh my God, like the time in San Diego working on that was a really beautiful, unbelievable time in my life. Like I remember I was just like post breakup. I like felt like Penny Lane. I was like kind of heartbroken, but
Yeah.
surrounded by people that made me laugh until my stomach hurt every day. And Cameron is just like the nicest man.
Yeah.
He is like this gentle soul who really wants the people around him to feel good about themselves. And he is so like, whenever we text or he gets in contact with me, he's like, the great Solea with like a capital G. And I'm like, you just are like, you're so good, you're so amazing. I think it's from journalistic experience as well. I'm like, you are incredible at making people feel good about themselves, and it's a really beautiful quality. And so I think what we wanted to honor, I think the show became a way that Cameron spent time with his family. I think it was very healing, um, to kind of, the show ended so joyfully at the end with the song. Everybody's coming together. Like our music is love. Like, oh my God, I haven't talked about this show in a long time. And whoa, I did not expect to get emotional talking about.
Yeah, I already listen, I've cried many times on the podcast. I've had guests
Yeah.
cry. It's
Oh,
fine.
it was um it was just such a big part of my life for so long, but that really was like, and I think it would have fared better now is the bummer. Um because we came to Broadway in a really tough climate for Broadway in general.
Mhm.
And I could probably give a TED talk, I think, on everything, like what you know why and how and what could have been different. But ultimately, with the experience that played out the way that it did, like we loved each other a lot. And um yeah, I feel like really to have, I just know the regard that people hold Penny Lane in their heart. And it felt like a pressure at first, and then it turned into a real honor. Um, but yeah, no, it was like that experience as a container was just like every feeling under the sun. Like just a really an experience that, you know, I take so much ownership over that role and that time. And hopefully there's a future for it outside of just what we did. I know that they're working on it again.
Yeah, they did a lab somewhere of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did, which I was like, because they weren't done. That's the thing about like, there's a weird finality to Broadway that I don't think is fair or necessary, because there's so many places to make amazing art that isn't just,
Well, I think it also depends on the show because, like, look at look at Jersey Boys. It ran off Broadway for many years after. And I'm sure
right.
there's a place in the world for Almost Famous. But I will say, like, my little fun nuggets of Almost Famous was that you guys did it at the Globe.
Mhm.
I worked with Colin Donald during the pandemic doing a
Oh
virtual
my gosh.
reading, and I like nerded out about Almost Famous.
Yeah.
He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a Golden God" is sung, and I was like, "What?" So
Ah, the best
God,
number ever.
when I was like watching it on stage for the first time, I was just like waiting for that moment because I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. And it was so, I think that Tom just did like the most, it made me laugh so much, like every time. And everyone in that cast was so unserious and
Yeah,
like just comedic geniuses across the board. And
yeah,
so, yeah, no, it was a, yeah, that was quite, God, it was just like
yeah.
such a long chapter of my life. And it's been
I
cool to see, like Casey turn into a grown up.
I do need to ask like the cliche like actor question. So because you mentioned like Penny Lane is so beloved,
Mhm.
and this movie is beloved as we know because I talk about it all the time. And literally, if it is on TV, I will sit and watch it. And I will.
Yeah, of
And
me
I'm
too.
actually seeing I'm seeing Ghosts tonight at Lincoln Center.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
Billy Crudup is in it. And to me, he will always just be Russell Hammond. Like there's like
100%.
no way around it. He was on the Tonight Show the other day. I'm like, it's Russell Hammond. Like, I don't care what
Russell,
else he's done. He's
not same.
Russell.
I could not agree more.
Yeah, he's Russell Hammond to me for like the past 20, I think it's like 25 years this year.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it's nuts.
Time is an illusion, Solea.
It
Yeah. But I lost my train of thought here. But okay, so how is it for you as an artist creating a character to make it your own that is known and loved by many people and like was actually essentially like an Academy Award nominated role?
Yeah. Um, I think it was kind of like distilling, like in essence, what is it about this character, like divorcing yourself from like I stopped watching the movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch it for a
Like
long
any
time.
performer out there, this like I have to say, if it is something based on a movie and you're creating it, like don't like you can watch the movie, just like don't repeatedly watch it in rehearsal.
No, 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 no. You
Just
you
like
really have to step away from it because
yes,
it's just like, and I think for me it was just like distilling like really, because I think it would be really silly in a show that is all about the reverence of fans and honoring fans and what
mhm.
they mean to artists as they grow. Like,
Or
Penny
if
Lane.
you could call them band-aids, right?
Yes, exactly. Penny Lane being like the ultimate band-aid, this person whose life is guided by her love of art and her love of artists, um, is like was just like distilling what about the spirit of this character really resonated with people that they wanted to um that they really latched onto, and that to me really came from, I was like, this is a girl who is like guided by her sense of freedom.
Mhm.
And I think like at least to me, Penny Lane to me was freedom. She was untethered to parents. She was untethered to age or job or need for anything besides, like, she's like, no attachments, no boundaries, and like to a fault, to a point
Yeah.
where, it's like everyone gets attached, everyone has boundaries, people fall in love and they fall in love with the wrong people. But this was, someone who she was totally guided by her heart, and she was untethered to anything but that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, that sense of freedom and ownership of yourself, and that that felt like, so I was like, okay, so you have to find that within you. And so for me, I think I probably played her most truthfully, and I felt most her at the Old Globe when I was 24, and I was heartbroken. And it was like, I remember like when we were doing the lab was at a time where like I was like staying on friends' couches because I was moving out of my apartment, but I had that kind of sense of like being this kind of like, really untethered, and really free, kind of, in this in a new way for the first time in my adult life. And I was like, this is so Penny Lane.
Yeah.
Being spending a lot of days of like kind of putting up a front of like I am totally fine and I feel great about everything, and but really what's happening is like but I'm committing to the music, and music is really getting me through, and God, and I love this, and maybe do I love this person or whatever, and so I think I felt the most like her in San Diego, and why that felt like such an incredible experience. And I think there was a certain like it felt so homey, like the set in San Diego was like all like postcards, and it just felt so like tactile and intimate. And I think, we got to Broadway, and then we had like this massive LED screen, and it felt a little bit less like, oh, here we all are,
Mhm.
all love to Derek McClain. Oh my gosh, he does the most amazing work. Moulin Rouge being, you
Yeah.
know. But like, when things come to Broadway and all of a sudden it's like everything's got to be bigger and grander and more expensive. And I think that show and like so much of what we love about Kate Hudson's performance is in, you know, the in-between moments and the shots that Cameron got on a whim, Um, like those shots of her dancing in the stadium, like, that wasn't a part of their plan. Cameron was like, hey, Kate, like, all right, we have a little bit time left in the day. Go ahead and dance here. And like, it's like Penny Lane, just the kind of girl who's just like wants to just, sit down and marvel in like what it means for a bunch of people to come together all because they love a song, like look what can happen,
Yeah.
and so yeah, to answer that question, it's pressure for sure. There was a time during the process of that show when I felt like if I didn't look good, if I didn't feel like really great about my appearance or something, then I would feel like I was failing at my job, because I was like, oh, Penny Lane, she's supposed to be beautiful. She's supposed to be, but then I'm like, that is so beside the point. You got this role. They chose you, and people don't love Kate's performance because she's pretty. They love it because it's nuanced and leveled and imperfect and all those things. And so, yeah, it was a journey for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I will say things that I do love are like kind of homages. So in the theatrical release, the scene isn't in it, but in the uncut version, it is. And you guys had it in the movie. It's the scene between Russell and Penny in the ice,
Yeah.
the ice room, I guess you
Ice
can.
Room, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I loved how that was added in. I mean, they did the same thing with Mean Girls. There was a scene between Katie and Regina at the dance and oh my God, what is it called? In the bathroom. And they cut
Yes.
that for the movie, but it's a deleted scene, but they added it to the musical.
Uh-huh.
So I
Yeah,
just love things like that.
it's cool. Yeah, and for like Cameron to kind of get to play around with these characters and deepen his relationship to them through um and through us, and making it like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, this is your version. But yeah, no, it was an incredible. It was
Yeah.
it was wild. It
Yeah.
was everything.
So, I mean, that happened at the Old Globe and then the pandemic happened. So during the pandemic, was there any like, could this come to Broadway? Like, what was,
Yeah, no, the producers were definitely like, we are going to Broadway. Like this is like, don't think that this isn't gonna happen. And pretty much as soon as it was possible, we were back in a rehearsal studio. And then it was just like, what's the right timing? And just Broadway, I mean, even now, like it's still like so dicey for anything, for a project that doesn't have like an A-list celebrity in it. Like I think it really, it's hard to know what's going to land, and you really have to be really precise with your marketing and have,
yeah,
producers who are going to be willing to keep things open as word of mouth travels. But yeah, like we opened that show at a time when like I think like less than half of the buildings in Midtown even had people in them working or living. And so yeah, Midtown felt like a ghost town in 2022. And it was just like, all right, well, do people even feel comfortable traveling to New York yet? Like, it's just like a lot of things, but it was so hopeful. I was like, it's an incredibly hopeful thing to do, to open a Broadway show, especially
yeah.
after a global pandemic, but we
You
tried.
also made your Broadway debut in it. And I want to bring this up because you posted a photo of like baby Solea on Instagram.
Yes.
You wrote like an Instagram post about like, I can't believe like if you told this person you would be making your Broadway debut at
Yeah.
this age. Like, so what was it like for you making your Broadway debut?
Oh my
And
God.
and in a new work in a role that you created.
Yeah, it was so I was so emotional. Like, the first preview day is really the most exciting day. And it just felt like it was interesting. Like my Broadway debut, like the opportunity to be on Broadway had come up a
Mhm.
few times. And I remember thinking like, okay, and I was with a team who luckily shepherded me in the direction of like, let's wait, let's wait until it's the right thing. And a part of me, post pandemic being like, oh my gosh, like now these years are going by and I still haven't made my Broadway debut, and it felt like this kind of stamp of approval from, the industry, from the world, or something that you need, which is so silly, just being on Broadway is not necessarily is an incredible honor, but isn't a sign of someone's, progress
Yeah.
necessarily in this industry. But all that to say, it's like that was the dream. That was the dream before anything else was I want to be on Broadway. And so when my parents were there, my people were there. It was just, I couldn't stop crying all day because it just felt like such a long road to get there. And after, everyone's saying Broadway's dead and nothing's ever coming back, and then be like, yes, it is. Here we are. And I'm making my Broadway debut. It was just like, it was the best. It was a really, really magical, unforgettable day.
So, second Broadway show was Hadestown. How did that come into your life? And it's so interesting too, because Hadestown had been around for so long. And my friends and I would talk about it. We're like, I think people forget that like
Yeah.
Solea was the first replacement. Like it didn't seem like it because
And so long.
the
Yeah, because Eva
show
and
for
Reed
so
held it
long.
down for so long. That came out of the blue, honestly. Like I was doing Hamlet, and then my team had kind of been like, you're not gonna replace. That's not what we're gonna. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, sure, sure, sure. But then when it was just like, this is one of the best shows of all time, and it just kind of came in. I think I'd auditioned for Rachel previously for something else years before. And I guess my name had just been in the mix for that. And so I just got an email being like, all right, like this offer has come in. And I was like, what? And, I was just like, I would love to be back on Broadway. I'd love to be back on Broadway in a show that is just like one of the best shows ever
Yeah.
written. Like, my God, like I was like, so I jumped at the chance to do it. And then I got to do it like with Reeve, which was such an honor. So it was very cool.
And again, it's like one of those things that I told you like earlier on where I'm like, when somebody's like, oh, Soleil's in the show, and you're like, yep, correct. That makes sense. Mhm. Yep. So,
Uh,
how is the Hadestown experience for you? Because I mean, the show is just so beautiful. I unfortunately didn't get to see you in the show, but there's clips online. Um, but how was that whole thing for you? You got to do it with Betty who you dressed up as
oh
for
my gosh.
Halloween.
Yes. No, that
Oh, and
was
Philip Boynton, who's just like,
the sweetest man. No, that was it was a really Betty, who is now one of my like best friends
mhm,
in the world. And that building of people are just like the most loving. They really, really care about each other. And it's not a clock in, clock out situation. Like it's a very tight knit company. And I knew that, we were stepping into, it was going to really be different for them, having all these different people in. And they loved each other, and Eva and Reeve and Tom Hewitt, or like the people who were kind of
yeah,
leaving when we got there, um, you know, they had created something that had just made like these seismic waves, and that people, they had beloved fans, and their performances were so, like when I was learning the show and I was in rehearsal and I'd go watch them, I was just like, these are just like these artists are such an incredible caliber, and they fell in love doing this, and this means so much to them. And like it definitely, I was very nervous because I knew, and I was doing Hamlet by night and Hadestown by day, and I was unbelievably tired. Like I was just like,
let's not forget too, like you also had to sing in Hamlet as
yeah,
well. And then
yeah.
had to like go crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
sure
I,
it was a lot at the time.
and that's how it goes. The circumstances are never ideal, but I was just like, by the time it came for me to like my first night, like, I think I'd had like a day off kind of thing. Like it was just like, which is fine. That happens,
Yeah.
but it's just like, it's like you can't tell that to all the people who are gonna post your first performance. Like you're like, you don't know that I've been working like 14 hours a day for the past month and I don't feel right and whatever. You're just like, all right, I just got to give it. But no, that was one of the most artistically, I just think the show is so beautiful. Like the score is just so unique and so fucking amazing. Like,
Uh,
and so it was a show that you can just be like, you knew that even your non-Broadway loving friends would love it. And it just felt like a show, like to be a part of its history at all.
yeah.
It's just a really special thing to be able to say.
And I will say too, I used to do merch with a certain company back in the day, and that was one of my favorite houses that I
Yeah.
ever got to work in. Like the front of house staff, I'm still very good friends with a lot
Yeah.
of people who work there, who have worked there.
Yeah.
Um, this is like even the front of house staff is just
A
super
lot of heart,
cool.
a lot of heart. And I just realized we've been talking for like 2 hours. I think we may need to get to our final questions. I could talk forever. I'm like, I gotta get some
Okay.
work
Well,
soon.
let's talk. Well, because we kind of like run the gamut, but like let's talk quickly about what you're doing now.
Mhm.
Moulin Rouge. How did that come into your life?
It's a role that weirdly enough has been, people have mentioned it to me many times, like, oh, you'd be great in this show. Um, and, coming off of Gatsby, during the run of that, I was like, okay, I don't know what's next. Who's to say? Um, and it was kind of another, I was like, what, I guess this is kind of what happens when you've been really putting yourself out there for like almost a decade of time, is that, I just worked with Sonia, and I've never, truth be told, I've never auditioned for this show. And so this just came as like this really kind of surprise. Like in the back of my mind, I was like, I wonder if this is ever going to come up. I wonder if they're ever going to want me to come in. Or I wonder if this role is ever going to be a part of my life, because it had just been, people have been talking to me about it for a long time. And then it just did. And it kind of just seemed like the next right thing
So it
for,
was a straight offer. Not
yes,
a girl.
it
Okay.
was. It was. Which is crazy, I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow. But at the same time, it's just kind of like a straight offer in the sense that, like, you know, like I've spent considerable amount of time doing my absolute best,
Yeah.
with members of, the decision makers of this team. And so it's a cool feeling to know that people, just based on, if you look at my resume as an audition, you'd be like, okay, this girl did Evita in 9 days and she just finished this, whatever. Like, then it seems like she can handle, a role like this. And so, yeah. And so, like, this show has definitely been, it feels like the other day, one of our, I think she's our head carpenter, Michelle, over at Moulin Rouge, she came in and brought this little plaque, and it made me so emotional, just to honor Marin Maisie, who had been in my dressing room, at the Al Hirschfeld. And I just had this sense looking at it where I was like, whoa, like we're all like, to be a part of the tapestry of this community is, once it's like you don't realize you're there, one of those people, until you're like,
Yeah.
whew, now I'm one of those women who will have spent months and months and months,
Mhm.
almost a year probably, in this dressing room. And it was like, it was her name with like all the shows she had done on Broadway, and I look at it every day, and you're just like, okay, right, I'm someone who does Broadway shows now,
Yeah.
and they trust me, and what an honor, and I get to do this. And Moulin Rouge is a hard show. It is. This role is, you know a challenge, a different kind of challenge than other shows. But it's also a ton of fun. And I told myself that this show would be about falling in love with like singing again.
Mhm.
And it totally has been that. And so it's, this just show is about joy and spectacle and camp and showmanship. And um, it's been a blast. It really
Yeah.
has.
I will say, because you mentioned like in singing, my friend who saw you in Gatsby, who's like obsessed with you, there was a moment during fireworks, like you hit some note and she had this look on her face. And I was like, what was that? She goes, she just like did something that I was not expecting.
Yeah, I mean, when you're like like the sisterhood of women who played this role, like I'm so far and away from like the second, third, like I think I'm like the fifth person on Broadway to play this role. Maybe
Are we also
fourth.
talking standbys and understudies? Okay, let's see. So there
There's
were Karen
Anne,
Olivo, there was Natalie, Lauren, JoJo,
Ashley,
Ashley. Oh, that I
Courtney.
said Lauren, I meant to say Ashley. Courtney Reed.
Yeah. So like I
Yeah.
think I'm the sixth. And then there's all the amazing standbys and covers and like, there's Haley Kalim Wright, who's the alternate at the moment, has been here before I got here.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of women have played this role. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, they luckily have been so cool with allowing John and I to really do our version of it. So it's
Yeah.
dope.
Well, what's nice is that you do have the alternate, so you don't have to do the show 8 times a week.
Oh
So
my God, can I tell you that was the most, they should, ugh, God, my next campaign in my life will be like, let everyone have a 7 show week. It is a life-changing thing. It really
there a
is.
particular day that you're like, this isn't your day? Is it like Sundays you don't perform?
Yeah, anything, I usually just take the option that allows me to have 48 hours
Got it.
of not being on stage. So right now I usually take Sunday, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever like taken a Sunday and just like sat in the audience to watch?
I have come back for people's last show where I happened not to be on. But other than that, you probably won't find me near
You're probably
Broadway
like
House
in
on my
bed.
day off.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I understand that. Please, like when I've had days off, I'm like, I'm just not leaving my apartment today. I'm just gonna rot in bed.
You know what I mean? We love a good bed rot day.
Yeah. And I will say what is fun that because I saw you repost this, you actually performed with a podcast fellow guest, Aaron C. Finley, last night as Christian.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that was a fun thing to see. And I was like, oh, look at that. I
Yeah.
had him on the pod. Yeah.
Aaron is so sweet. We had a blast. We have a blast together when we go on. He's such an amazing singer.
Yeah, he's one of the still OG
Yeah,
Moulin
I
Rouge.
think he's holding strong. I think there's like two of them left. Maybe no,
Yeah.
three.
Yeah.
Or maybe four. But yeah, there's some lifers in there. They've stuck it out for a
I
while.
think like when I actually like finally met him in person was I specifically went to Moulin Rouge just to see him go on as Christian because I'd never seen it.
Oh, hell
And I
yeah.
like happened to have won the lottery. But anyway, you're in Moulin Rouge now for an extended period of time, which, we cannot confirm or deny. And you have your short nails. You know what I was thinking about? So you know how like they have stickers, like the nail polish stickers that
Yes,
you can put on, you
yes.
can do something like that.
Maybe that's what I'll do. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And I was told if you do like the base coat, you let that dry, you put the nail polish on, and then put a top coat, it lasts longer, or
Hey, hell
maybe it just lasts
yes.
longer with the top coat. Yeah,
Perhaps.
girls, we watch out for each other.
Okay, hell yeah.
So you are doing the Broadway cruise,
I am.
which is
Yes,
really
yes,
exciting. So you guys are leaving from Miami, you're going to Cozumel, Mexico.
yes, yes. I
And
can't wait. It's gonna be a
yeah,
blast.
yeah. But more importantly, you have a petite, since we're, Moulin Rouge, we're going to do French. You have a little residency happening at the Carlyle. You want to talk
I
about that?
do. Yes. Oh my God. I'm so excited. I was so like I can't believe that I have been asked to perform at such a iconic venue. And I'm doing a show called At Least for Tonight, an evening with Solea Pfeiffer. And I'm framing the whole show around the fact that I have not survived in any show that I've done for the past 2 years. And so I'm just kind of that the thesis statement of my show is trying to answer the question of like, what does it mean when the universe is telling you that you're the one who dies every time, you know? And so I'm gonna sing songs from the shows that I've been in and some songs that I'm adding to my rep that I'm very excited about with my
Are we gonna
great
do
friend Jacob Yates, and we're
any
gonna have.
sopranos
Oh,
songs? Okay,
absolutely.
good.
Yes, a little bit of everything. And definitely in the vein of like, you know, the cabaret style of the Carlyle. And so it's April 24th, 25th, and 26th. And we're gonna have a wonderful time. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're gonna have what's that song? Real good time, yes, sir. Bringing it back to like Audra.
Yes.
Yes. So, I mean, you said like you've performed a lot of dream roles. Do you
Yes.
have any other dream roles or performers or shows or projects you want to work on? I mean, we are manifesting you and Audra doing something together
Yeah.
still.
The last, I think I'd say there's two, and at the top of the list is Dot. I really want to do Sunday in the Park with George is right there as like the one of the ultimate dream shows and roles. So I'm putting that that I will get to touch that material really soon. Um, and and honestly, in this next chapter of my life, post Moulin Rouge, like I'm so grateful for the time that I've spent on Broadway. And I think the next time that I come to Broadway, it will be when I'm originating a role and something that I've worked on. And I've been lucky to have my hands in pieces that I love so much. Gatsby being up there, and so you know, and then Kathy in the last 5 years. Or Jamie. I would just love to do that show. But I would say those are kind of the only ones as far as shows that exist. And
Mhm.
then the rest of my dream roles are the ones that I've gotten the chance to work on that the world hasn't seen in that scale yet. And I, you know, I write my own things, and so
Yeah, I
I
mean, you also have a show with Audible that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you
yeah,
wrote.
and
Yeah.
so you know, you get a taste of what it feels like to create in your own right. And I've had a front row seat to, you know, I've gotten to work with James Lapine and Cameron Crowe and Rachel Chavkin and these people who, you know, when I've been so lucky to be privy to the process of people that I consider to be like the greats and some of the greatest artists of our time. And so I'm like, all right, you know, in this next decade of my life, I hope to be to create as much as I am a vessel, you know.
Do you have any top going theater experiences?
Okay, can I say the Jellicle Ball at the PAC
Mhm.
was, I think, one of the most beautifully realized things I've seen in a very long time. I loved it. I thought I was like, I laughed, I cried. I thought it was such a celebration, like an honest, authentic celebration of culture. And it wasn't trying to be anything besides what it was and honor the performers. And I just thought it was unbelievable. I loved it. It was one of my favorite things I've ever seen. And then seeing Kevin Solak and Gypsy. My soul left my body. I hovered 6 inches above my seat, and I screamed and almost passed out. And that's whatever that seeing, yeah, Kevin Solek and Gypsy, transcendent. And we should all feel very lucky to be alive in the time that he is doing his thing on
Yeah.
Broadway.
I mean, I saw him in the second act. I'm like, oh, it's Tulsa. Oh, cool.
There
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah,
Yes.
there is that big dance number hiding
Uh-huh.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's great. Okay, so we're gonna quickly do the actor studio questions if you're up for it.
Please.
Okay. So Leia,
Mhm.
what is your favorite word?
My favorite word. Oh my gosh. Hmm. You know, maybe lately, I think, let's say the word divine. I think it's an energy. It is a wonderful way to describe yourself or an experience. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, I think of all the things, you know, it just feels so Broadway and so Damey. And I think it's just like it's an energy that right now, in a word that seems to be like, all right, if I can tap into that divine feminine energy, then I know I'm doing something right. So that's what I'd say.
What is your least favorite word?
Mm, basic. Because yeah,
Oh,
I think it's a really unfair description. I don't think there's such thing as a basic person.
what turns you on?
Mm, ambition,
What turns you off?
uh, victimization.
What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, fuck. Fuck them.
Yeah, fuck 'em. There we go. What is no, that's not correct. What sound or noise do you love?
um, I love I love the sound. I love some good singing. I love the sound of a woman or a person. I love a person singing well at the top of their lungs. That's what I'll say.
Period. What sound or noise do you hate?
Um, this is very specific. I have like such a sensory thing. Like if I know that someone's hand, like when people like fold paper in that way, it like
Yeah,
even thinking about it gives me goosebumps. I hate that
yeah.
sound.
I got a little
You know what I
myself.
mean?
Yeah. Ooh. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
I think if I were to attempt anything, it would maybe be music therapy.
What profession would you not like to do?
Um, oh my God, accounting.
And finally, as Mr. Lipton used to say, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Everybody's here. Welcome.
And he would say, and here are your students. Oh,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for coming on. Is there
Thank you
anything
for
else
having
you want to
me.
like add, say, life advice, questions, or
Oh my
concerns,
gosh.
anything you want to throw out there?
I just want to
Go see
say
at the Carlisle.
thank you to you for asking such amazing questions and letting me talk so much about myself and my life, and just thank you
Oh,
for having such a reverence and honor of artists like me and like us in this community.
I'm
It means
blushing. Sorry.
everything. Thank you so much.
Course. Well, you can stay on once I'm done recording so we can say like our final goodbyes officially.
Yes.
But yeah, everyone listening, please go see Solea in Moulin Rouge. Again, she's a fucking great Satine, like truly a great Satine. She dies so well. Sorry.
Thank
I
you.
had to add that in there as a joke. And go see you at the Carlisle. Where can
Yes,
people
please.
go and get tickets?
On the Carlisle website,
Mhm.
I think it's like Carlisle Rosewood Hotels. They have the lineup of their season of performers, and I'm in there. So
Yeah, when it's a
yeah,
private, you'll finally get to hear some Solea soprano in there.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
which I'm excited about. Let's
yeah.
manifest that more for you, or just like for
Hell
me.
yes,
Yeah,
please. Would
just
love
like
that.
please, anyone out there also just like manifest Soleil and Audra.
Yes, please, everyone. We need everyone's efforts on this
And
one.
like Heavens and Gypsy, you can't hook that up. She can be like
Listen,
a surprise guest at the
he's doing
Carlisle.
what he can. He's doing what he can.
I'll be like,
I
hey, Audra, come see my girl, my boo at the Carlisle. Maybe sing with her.
exactly. Take a night off work. It's fine.
What understudies are for. Okay.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, anything else?
I
No?
think that's
Okay,
it.
great.
Just
Thanks
thank you
everyone for listening and go see Soleil and Moulin Rouge in the Carlisle.
so much.
Oh.